In this lesson, we'll learn how to modify the way an object rotates and pivots with nulls. Let's go ahead and take a look at our wing flaps. If we were to try to rotate them, notice this is very incorrect. Wing flaps should not do this. Otherwise, the pilot would have a serious problem. So what we'll learn is how to correct this by using, let's say, an in-between object. We're going to create a null, and we're going to match it to the angle of these flaps. And then by that, we can parent the flaps to those nulls. And as we start to rotate the nulls, we'll get much better performance from these wing flaps. So let's say we get right to work. We'll go to primitive and choose null. If we were to go to our display menu and set that to wireframe, we can now see the null on the scene. Let's start to move this over. So I'll just move that up over in the X, move that up in the Y axis and back. And now we can go back to our display menu and set this to texture decal. All right, so our goal here is to move this in place so it matches the angle, again, of the wing flap. Let's start with this left side. And what I'm going to do is kind of center it between the wing flap. We could just kind of eye it in place. So we'll move it in place. And now we can go to our rotate tool, start to rotate it in place. So now it's starting to match the angle. If you needed to move it again, go into your move tool. Notice that it might be inconvenient. See how it kind of offsets? But we can move it in this angle by simply right-clicking at the center of the manipulator and choosing local. So that might be much better to work with once we have rotated the null in place. Okay, great. So that looks good. I might go in and maybe rotate this in the Y-axis just to rotate it back just a little bit more, but that looks really nice. All right, so at this point, let's go ahead and rename this object. I'll just hit Enter to go to its properties. We'll call this nPiv for null pivot underscore L underscore wing flap enter 01. All right, once it's been renamed, let's go ahead and duplicate this now for the outer wing flap. So that's going to be Control D. And now we can start to move this down, move it back up. Also, feel free to go ahead and switch your move tool back to, let's say, global, just to kind of move it in place initially. And then if we need to move it at an angle, we can switch that back to local. All right, so I'll go ahead and just move it down. We're just about done setting this up. And then we can mirror it across. I'll show you how to do that, which will save us a lot of time. Okay, let's see. Might go to more of a top view here and kind of move this over. That looks pretty good. Now we can go ahead and rotate it in place in the Y-axis. That looks nice. All right, let's go ahead and try another axis. How about the Z? And kind of rotate that over. Bring it down in the Y-axis. And then rotate it. It takes a little bit of fine-tuning, but we'll get it. The important thing is to have a little bit of patience and just to take your time. Because if we try to rush through this, chances are we'll need to go back and redo some work, which is never a good thing. So might as well get it right the first time. All right, I'd say that looks really nice. So once that's in place, let's go ahead and hit Enter and rename this. We'll call this nPiv L wing flap outer 01. And just FYI, that 01, remember we added that to our name. Well, if we duplicated the object, we should have a 2 at the end. So this lets us know that the name of this object is not unique. So naming conventions are extremely helpful in the rigging process. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and rename this to flap outer 01. And now we're ready to mirror this across. Now, something important to keep in mind when mirroring, let's go to our King panel, is that in our case, we'd want to make sure that we do not set a neutral pose on these objects, because right now we have their global position and orientation, which is exactly what we need to quickly mirror this over. So to have that happen, let's go ahead and start with our inner flap null. We'll just select that and press Control D. And now, all we need to do is go to our x-axis, set this to a value of negative. So we'll put in the reciprocal. Notice now the position has moved to the place it needs to be at. The y-axis and z-axis is fine. So the next thing we need to correct is going to be our rotate z-axis. Let's go ahead and set this to positive 21 instead of negative. I'll just get rid of the negative symbol. Okay, wonderful. And it looks like we added some rotation in the y-axis also, so let's go ahead and set that to positive as well. Great. And now our handle is in place. Great. All right, well, let's go ahead and do the same thing for the next null. We'll go ahead and select that. Control D, duplicate it. This time we want to use a value of negative 15 in the x. Let's go ahead and put in that negative operation, hit enter. All right, the position is taken care of. How about the y-axis? We'll need to go ahead and set that to a positive value, and the z-axis to a positive value also. And now you'll see that the null is in place. Beautiful. All right, so let's go ahead and rename these. We're just about finished. This is going to be npiv r, since we're on the right side now, wing flap outer 01. We could always copy this name, just select it, Control C, and now select the next object. Notice how the property page refreshes because we have refresh active. If you don't want that to happen, you could always lock this down. But I'll set that back to refresh. We can go ahead and paste the name in and simply switch outer to inner. Beautiful. All right, so let's say we go ahead and take these objects and parent them to the wing so that they always follow with the ship. So we'll go ahead and take the ones on the right side, and with them selected, we'll use the hotkey for parent, which is the /. And now we can middle click the wing to define that as the parent. Okay, beautiful. So at this point, we're ready to go ahead and take these two objects and set a neutral pose. We'll want to clean up their transforms. That way we can do a direct connection when it comes time to control these with custom parameters. So we'll get into that exciting topic also. All right, great. So lastly, what we'd want to do is take our flaps and parent them to our nulls. All right, so I'll go ahead and take this one here. Selecting the flap, go to our parent tool, again the /, and then middle click on the handle, and now that's taken care of. So as we select the handle, notice we have controlled the orientation of the flap by that null, and notice the pivot is much better. All right, let's go ahead and take care of the next one. If you find that the handle, or the null in this case, is needing to be modified just a little bit more, this looks like it needs to be pushed back, and chances are the one on the opposite side also needs to be pushed back. So we could select both of them. I'm just going to hit spacebar, go in and grab the next null. There we go. And now we can go to our move tool, select the z-axis, and just move that back just a little bit more. Okay, great. So that's much better. And of course, once we've added a change like that, we'll want to set a neutral pose. So we're good to go now. Let's go ahead and grab the right inner flap, go to our parent tool, and parent. We can also test this out by selecting the null and rotating it. Beautiful. All right, let's go to the next side, take care of that, and our work will be done. So we can now go ahead and parent this flap, test it out, and pat ourselves on the back. All right, great. So in this lesson, we learned how to modify an object's pivot and rotation using another object. So you'll find that nulls work great for secondary controls to set up these type of systems.